Good morning, or afternoon, or good night, whenever you're watching this. We are going to be going over the Algebra and Geometry Guided Practice. More specifically, we're going to be going over angles. There's a lot of different parts of geometry, and measurement of angles is a very important part. So, have your Algebra and Geometry Guided Practice assignment open and follow along. So, first and foremost, before we look at the first picture, there are some basics I think we should go over in terms of angles. There are three kinds of angles you will see. We have acute, we have right, and we have obtuse. Okay? And the tighter the angle is, the smaller the measure is, and the more open it is, the larger the angle, the measure is. This one here, that's right in the middle, that's 90 degrees, and these will measure to be greater than 90, and these will measure to be less than 90. Okay? Now, we can connect these up to make a triangle. Well, this one actually has to be more careful. Okay? This, right? So now we have an acute triangle, a right triangle, and an obtuse triangle. And that's one way to identify those shapes. So, moving along. Because if you notice, I can make a triangle just by closing an angle. We can see that the triangle is probably the simplest shape, simplest closed shape with straight sides. You can't have a shape with only two sides and have them be straight. You have to have three. So that makes the triangle the simplest shape. There in that first diagram, we'll see that every triangle of any kind will always have its angles add up to 180 degrees. You can set your watch by it. It'll always be true. You have tall, skinny triangles, short and squatty triangles, triangles that are like just the same all around. Those all have angles that add up to 180 degrees. And let me write this as kind of a thing we can kind of look at formally. I have three angles. Call it angle A, angle B, and angle C. A plus B plus C will always equal 180 degrees. So algebra, you might see some letters here. We do use algebra not just to solve problems, but also to describe things without having to bring up specific examples, right? You understand that A, B, and C refers to each of those angles, and so we can say that when we add the measures up, we'll get to 180 degrees. So I don't have to talk about a specific example. I could have drawn any triangle I wanted and labeled the corners A, B, and C, and this still would have been true. Okay. So let's look at the first question. Sometimes we'll see a problem like this. 70 degrees, 35 degrees, and some ungiven value x degrees. Okay? And we want to find the value of x. Now, to do that, we do 70 plus 35 plus x, because that's some number we don't know. It's going to equal to 180. And from this point, beforehand, I've been talking about two steps to solve algebraic equations. Divide and subtract. No, the other way. Subtract and divide. Subtract and divide. It's always subtract and divide. Sometimes, though, there's a step that comes before this one. If this is step 1 and step 2, I'll come to step 0. It's going to be simplify. Make my equation look simpler and easier to work with. Okay? So, for example, here we see 70 plus 35. We're going to simplify it to be 105 plus x. It's 180. We simply added my two values to get this new one. And so we've done this. Now we simply subtract to get x by itself. And 180 minus 105 is 75, giving me my answer. So the answer to question number 1 is 75. Okay? So that's clear enough. So we can talk about acute, obtuse, and right triangles. There is another way of identifying triangles. And that is to say whether the sides are equal, right? Note, my categories I talked about earlier were based off of what the angles were. If we're talking about the sides, you can identify a triangle by its sides by saying whether two sides, if there are two equal sides, if all three sides are equal, or if none of the sides are equal, right? Yeah. Or if none of the sides are equal. And so this is an isosceles. These two are equal. Isosceles. If all three are equal, they are called equilateral. And if none of them are the same, then we call them scalene. So my reason for bringing this up, besides just learning about the names of kinds of triangles, for an equilateral triangle, every equilateral triangle pretty much just looks the same. It always just kind of looks like a really basic triangle. Not only are all of its angles the same, you can also say that all of its sides are the same as well. And that is because all of their angles are equal. In the same way, we see that these two sides are equal. We're going to talk about the opposite sides, the opposite angle to it. This side's opposite angle is this angle. And this angle's opposite side is this side. To think of it, think if I drew an angle, right? And if I closed it to make a triangle, I would need to draw its opposite side. Okay? So, that being said, if two sides are equal, then their opposite angles will be equal. And if two angles are equal, their opposite sides will be equal with each other. So, just wanted to say that. Now, it'd be useful to know, looking at the next question. Now, let's say we have a square, right? And we're going to tilt it on one of its corners. I don't have the little grid that I have in my actual classroom, so I'm going to hope this is as good of a square as I can draw. I know it's like, oh, that's a diamond. Well, it's like on its side, but it is a square. We just tilted it. When you tilt a shape, that doesn't change what kind of shape it is. It just means we're looking at it in a different way. My angles are all still right angles, or I tried to draw them as right as I could, and my sides are all still the same length. Okay? So this is still a square. It's just drawn at a different angle. I just tilted it. So we're going to take our square, and take it on its corner, and then slice it in half like a PB&J. And there are some facts that I have not changed. I may have turned it into a triangle by slicing it, but two things are still true. These two sides are still equal, and this angle is still 90 degrees. That has not changed. And if these two sides are equal, then like we said before, these two angles must be equal also. So I can label them both with x because they can be represented with the same variable. They are the same value. Or by being the same value, we can use the same variable. So if I wanted to find x, all I would have to do is do 90 plus my other two angles, which happen to be x, the same number. I know they add up to 180. Now, remember, step 0 I said was to simplify. That's 90 plus 2x equals 180. Now, here's the thing. As soon as we see that, we should kind of start thinking, oh, this is a little familiar. If I ignore the whole rest of my question and pretend that I'm starting from here, then all of a sudden, this is what we did in the last week, right? Is solving equations like this. So we do our two steps. Subtract 90 from both sides. We subtract first, get 2x equals 90, and then we divide. And x equals 45. Because 90 divided by 2 is 45. Okay? So that is the answer to my second question. Moving on. I want to say one more thing. Oh, no. This is just the end of it. This here. Okay, so we've got this last problem. And I want you to type all of your answers into one blank. I accidentally have two blanks for one question. There's a blank right underneath the picture, and then there's a question later with a blank there. You can put your answer on either blank. I don't personally care. But, so we're going to do this. We're going to, if we look at this picture, you're given four angles. This one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay? And we are only given four measurements. But we have to find 8 different values. Okay? We have to find this one, we have to find this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay? So we have to find 8 different variables, A through H. And we're going to put them all in the same blank. But we can do that even from only 4 numbers given using our knowledge of geometry. So let's look at the first example. So we know that this angle, okay, is a right angle because this is a rectangle. This total thing is 90 degrees. And part of it is 50 degrees. So if we have 50 for one part and the whole thing is 90, then the remaining part must be 40. Because 40 and 50 make 90. If I did 90, or if I just left it labeled as A, I could set this up. A plus 50 equals 90. Okay? And that describes the situation. I can subtract 50 from both sides, and we'd see A equals 40. Okay? So that all being said, we can put that down as 40. So let's take a look at B. So in B we have a triangle. We see B down the bottom. We see 50 and 55. So to solve for this, I know that 50 plus 55 plus b equals 180. Or 105 plus b equals 180. I can remove the 105 from both sides. We see b equals 75. And so then we have that value. Remember, we did it just like that first question we did. We added two of our angles, and that got us the 105. We know that this last angle will bring us to 180. We use subtraction to find out how much b needs to be to get us from 105 to 180. And the answer is 75. Now, C is very similar to A, which is kind of flipped the other direction. But it's the same math. So we know that we have an angle, and part of it is 55 degrees. The other part is C, but we know, because this is a right angle, it's a rectangle, we know that 55 plus C equals 90, because it's a right angle. To find C, we simply subtract 55 from both sides. And 90 minus 55 is 35. That gives me that third value, 35. Okay? Now we have part D. Part D is going to be similar to part B because we have a triangle, and by doing this work so far, by finding this, we are now able to look at this triangle. 40, or solving A allows us to look at the whole triangle. So 40 plus 60 plus D will equal, plus D will equal 180. 40 plus 60 plus D equals 180. So I simplify to get 100 plus D equals 180. And to get D by itself, we subtract 100 from both sides. And D equals 80. And that's that fourth value. We're already halfway done. So now we can find E. Because we have a right angle. Part of it is 80. So what can we add to 80 to get to 90? That's right, 10. And so 80 and 10 is 90, therefore E is 10. So it's all coming together. Now, we can't do H or G yet because there's not enough information. We know these need to add up to 170 to get this whole thing to 180, right? 170 plus 10 would be 180, but there's a lot of ways to add two numbers to get to 170, right? So we're going to hold off on H and G. We're going to move on to F, which is also just a letter after E. I kind of labeled these in the exact order I wanted to do them. 70 plus 35 plus F, because we have the three corners of a triangle, and here we have F is the only missing angle, so these three values need to add up to 180. So 70 plus 35 is 105, plus F equals 180. So that means that this here, we subtract the 105 from both sides, and we get F equals 75. Cool? Cool. If this is feeling repetitive, that's because kind of is. That only means that it's starting to make sense, because you're thinking like, okay, you add it, and then you subtract it. All right, fine, cool, we get it, right? So, with that, again, at the end there, you say, okay, we get it. It's a sign that, well, you get it. And if you don't understand this so far, try to watch this video again. You can play back parts that lose you. Try to follow along. And if some part you're like, well, what is Mr. Fraley saying here? Try to watch those parts that are confusing you a few times, and if it's still a problem for you, then you can come by my office hours, which is really every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Oh shoot, we're not gonna really have office hours anymore. Come see me after class, really. That's the best I can tell you. Come see me after class. So, we have 75 plus g is 90. Again, it's my angle. It's my angle situation again. So 75 plus some value needs to make my right angle. So 75 plus g equals 90 degrees. That is a g. Okay. Subtract 75 from both sides. We see g equals 15. That's a 15. To find this third one, we do our triangle business again. We see 10. We found earlier, plus 15. Remember earlier I said we couldn't solve this because we had two values that added up to 170, but we didn't know either of them, so we couldn't answer. 10 plus 15 plus h will equal to 180. Combine my 10 and my 15 to make 25, plus h is 180. So we subtract the 25. We have h equals 155, which is the final value. So to recap, we have a equals 40. This is what you're writing into the one blank. A equals 40, B equals 75, C equals 35, D equals 80, E equals 10, F equals 75, G equals 15, and H equals 155. Or you can just write it as a comma separated list, like just write 40, comma 75, comma 35, comma 80, comma dot dot dot, right? So just write that as a comma list. You can do that if you want also. But yeah, try to write it in the order A through H, like that. And that'll do it. So, thank you for watching, and you have a good day.